Good morning and welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Historical Building and Resource Committee of the City of Winnipeg. This Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. I'm Jason Schreier, this year's chair of the committee, City Councilor for Elmwood East Kildonan. I am joined as well by Councilor Sean Dobson, who's the mayor's representative of the committee. In my recollection, City Councilor for
St. James.
St. James, that's an easy one, not my thing. And we are joined as well. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 territory, the home traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the River Métis, our regional artisans from Shoal Lake 40, First Nation, Treaty 3 territory. We welcome all present members of the committee. We have with us as well a new member of the committee, which we'll bring up later in the agenda. Or we can mention it now.
It's not an agenda item.
If I may mention our new citizen member, Mikhail Sokolovsky, and good morning and welcome to the committee. And thank you. We're joined as well with Leah Cowan, the senior committee clerk. Let's see, Winnipeg, as well as Rena Ricci, Derek Steiner, Planning Property Development Department, as well as Marie Peterson, our Historical Buildings Officer from the Planning Property and Development Department. Good morning to everybody. At this moment, for Cowan, where do we go from here?
Motion to allow members to participate via Zoom.
So the motion for Glenn Gross, Sandra Hollander, Rochelle Kerouac, Joseph Levin, Mikhail Sokolowski, Nicholas Bassoff, and John Wells, please.
So move that motion. Any discussion? Motion carries. Thank you.
And
A motion that the minutes of the meeting held on May 17th, 2024 be taken as read and confirmed.
Those in favor?
Aye.
And motion carries.
Now you're done.
item one.
We're into item 1, list of historical resources, nomination of Centennial Fountain at 311 Broadway at Donald Street.
Would you like me to do just a little brief introduction about the resources on our agenda today and then dive into each one individually?
Yes.
Okay, sure. So the director of the Planning, Property and Development Department nominated all of the resources that are on the agenda today for addition to the list of historical resources under the Historical Resources Bylaw. So the City of Winnipeg owns both of the resources, and these are moving forward as a part of a larger project in which the city is evaluating its own resources for potential heritage designation. For each resource, the heritage values are noted in each respective historical report that the committee is considering today, and the proposed list of character-defining elements are published online with the agenda. So for today's meeting, the HBRC is making recommendations to the Standing Policy Committee on Property and Development on whether or not to add these resources to the list of historical resources based on heritage value. The Standing Policy Committee will then consider the HBRC's recommendations and may consider the economic viability of conserving the resource. There are some implications for listed historical resources, including that they are protected from demolition. The character-defining elements are protected against alterations. A caveat is registered on the title of the property. Owners are eligible to apply for funding programs that are aimed at heritage conservation, and basements or crawl spaces must be heated to 10 degrees Celsius, subject to the Vacant Buildings Bylaw. With that, shall we move on to item 1?
Yes.
Okay, so the first item is 311 Broadway, and that is the Centennial Fountain. So this fountain was constructed in 1970 to commemorate Winnipeg's water source from Shoal Lake via the aqueduct and is located within the Tree Line Boulevard on Broadway. It was designed in the international style. Marie, did you want to sort of add anything else about its heritage value?
I think that's
Kind of captured it.
Yep.
Okay, and the proposed character defining elements are noted on the agenda and they aim to capture the original fountain elements within the boulevard. Are there any thoughts or items for discussion?
Yeah, if I may, there was talk about the idea that in this case, at least, the city's looking more at the historical of the different criteria, more concentrated on the history rather than the architectural significance. There's different criteria in which judgments are made and recommendations are made. Is there any comment that you'd like to make to that?
I suppose the criteria hasn't.
To be given that this fountain is younger than I am, and I think it's going for historical designation. I'm not sure how.
Are you giving away your age?
Well, I was 3 years old when Malco Centennial came around, so yeah.
So the criteria for designation hasn't changed since 2014 when the Historical Resources Bylaw was enacted, and that repealed the former heritage or historical buildings bylaw. So the criteria is that a resource must have architectural and historical significance. So both of those are at play or included in the criteria for a resource having heritage value. And a resource must be 40 years old in order to be eligible for designation. So this one is 1970, so it passes that threshold. And what our bylaw from 2014 has allowed us to do is to designate land as well as to designate buildings and structures. So the fountain is sort of part landscape architecture, part, I wouldn't call it a building because it's not occupiable, but it's a fountain structure.
If I may as well, the original reason for the fountain was to celebrate Winnipeg's fresh water plus its 100th anniversary, Manitoba's 100th anniversary. And in 2023, it was there was an installation reviewing and celebrating Shoal Lake 40, as opposed to just celebrating the fact that Winnipeg has fresh water. It reflects that Winnipeg is now, much more connected to its Indigenous history and is celebrating that. So that's part of the reason that the fountain is on our list.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? I'd like to say that I think the summer of 1970 are with my first memories. I have vague recollections of summer of 1970. The team that year, I met Jean Chrétien compared beaded necklaces at the corner of Walker's Redwood and Main, a block from which I live right now. When it was the dance back in 1970, Carling, and there was a centennial celebration right there on the corner of Redwood and Main. I had no idea I'd be living a block from there. And my mother had made centennial dresses in a style made for herself and my sisters for 1970 celebrations. And I recall being pointed out Mitch Podolak at not far from the fountain. My mother explained to me as a 3-year-old that he was the leader of the hippie scene, the founder of the Winter Folk Festival and the West End and so some of my memories of 1970 summer, including that's the summer I realized that Broadway was my favorite street I'd ever seen because of the grand median in which we had people sitting around, including at this fountain. And so these are my earliest memories, happen to be centennial. So for me, it's rather centering. I can, in a sense, internalize this one. And interesting, fascinating that something now younger than I am, so it's going to be on the sort of designation list here. I just want to make those comments and thank those involved in this. Any other further comments or discussions on this? Having seen none, would anybody like to move a motion to move this proposal?
Nicola has.
Nicola is, to move the motion or any comment?
Nope, to move.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? And, motion carries. Thank you. Welcome from,
Number three.
pardon me?
Oh, just the screen was jumping around quite a bit.
Let's see, the unanimity of it.
So item 2.
Fair enough. Now, item number 2, list of historical resources, nomination, Midland Railway Building, 200 Isabel Street, also known as 555 Ross Avenue, and so what's referred to as the Freight House.
So this building dates back to 1911 and was constructed as a railway station for the Midland Railway. It is located in the Centennial neighborhood and represents an era of development in which Winnipeg was a primary transportation hub of goods and people in Western Canada. Does that sum it up, Marie?
That's the one.
Okay, and so the CDEs, or the character defining elements, aim to capture the exterior of the building. And then on the interior, the wood tree-like columns of the structural system are proposed to be listed as well. And those are some unique features of the building.
Further comments or questions? All right, so, actually, I do have a question on this one. And that is that numerous organizations are in the building. And you did mention in your preamble, your first comments, you talked about the rules of which those that own the building are obliged to. In this case, who owns the building?
The city owns the building.
Okay. So you're referring to the city in both these cases, when you refer to the owner, you weren't referring to the renters, the leasers?
You know what, the city is the owner, but I'm not sure what the terms of the leases are between the tenants and the city. So I'm not sure whose responsibility it is for whatever improvements happen to the building.
Fair enough. Well, I'm sure the owners of the building will take heed of this vote here today. Yes, let's see what they.
Just a little note on that. So the departments who are responsible for the buildings have approved the potential designation of these. So we have had sign off by the directors of parks for the fountain and community services for the Midland Railway Building.
Any further comments? All right. Seeing none, Marie, would you move the motion?
Murray's not.
Oh, of course, it's.
Yeah.
No, I'll do.
I would love to, but I can't.
Sandra, would you move the motion to accept the report for Glenn? All right, Glenn, and there you go. All right, motion has been moved. Any further discussion? Are those in favor? Was that discussion from Joe Levin?
No, I think he's just moving his phone.
Oh, he's just putting a phone. All right. So our motion is there.
Actually, he
Those in-
does have.
No,
his
he doesn't have his
hand up.
hand up.
Oh, he does.
Sorry.
Excuse me. Hi, Joe. Please go ahead.
Oh, I think you took the hand away.
Oh, all good.
Yeah, I just had my hand raised in support of the motion.
Oh, fair enough. Rachel, did you have your hand up for Rachel?
Rochelle, yeah, I just a quick comment on the building itself. I think from an accessibility perspective, I know that when buildings like these get designated, it doesn't mean that they're frozen in time. But I'm just curious about things that like were kind of identified a bit by the department or like by the committee in our site review. And there's a lot of heritage material that really caught our interest as was indicated in the report, but I'm wondering about like, you know, in terms of like accessibility upgrades and retrofits to the front of house, is there thought to that? Because I know a little bit kind of that of the like the need for it for the facility users, and just kind of maybe that's a bit of a like not a red flag, but something that might come up is, you know, will this, you know, be a challenge for us to make necessary accessibility upgrades? I think we kind of know the answer, but maybe there's something there to discuss further. I'm not sure. Just wanted to raise that up.
Good question. Would you like me to address that, counselors? Yep. We certainly support upgrades for accessibility to all of our heritage resources. If it is identified that accessibility upgrades are required, we would certainly work with the ownership group. In this case, the City of Winnipeg owns the building. So what we would do is we would review plans for the proposed accessibility upgrades, and we would try to align those with the standards and guidelines for the Conservation of Historic Places in Canada, which our bylaw adopts as our guiding document. So we would sort of try to see which options have the least invasive impact on the heritage building, or options that are considered more reversible than others. And we have had several successful projects, even in the recent past, of upgrades to city-owned facilities, such as the two Carnegie libraries, the one on Cornish, on Westgate, the Cornish Library, and St. John's Library. So those both had some nice modern upgrades that maintain the heritage values of the building and made them accessible at the same time, or as accessible as possible.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rena.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, where are we here? Where are we
So
at?
Glenn Gross moved a motion to add the building to the list of historical resources with the proposed CBEs and forward it to the Standing Policy Committee.
Right, and those in favor? Right, those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we rebel over, Sean? We're good? All right.
We're good.
Right?
Now just a motion for adjournment.
Sure, and I would just like to mention, in terms of the acknowledgement of the symbolism of the fountain and our water and the relationship with the Plainton First Nation, I'd like to make the statement as well when I'm reminiscing about this summer of Manitoba Centennial, summer of 1970 as well. I do memories, vague memories, one of my first memories, and now I found visual record of it decades later, in recent years, of a visit to Sagging First Nation, meeting as well in full Regalian headdress. That would be the Grand Chief David Shane, Grand Chief of the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood, which was called at the time, and also when there would be a friend of the family, short at the time over years. And part of my upbringing, and that all started for my memories of the summer of 1970, Manitoba Centennial, same time as the building of our town on Broadway. I just want to make that point as well. And on that basis, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, motion for adjournment, and I see consensus on that.
Is that Councillor Dobson?
Yes,
Is that?
yes, I move the motion to adjourn.
Okay, great.